Well, thank you for staying tuned. You're watching Business Nigeria with Tolulokpe Ogunjobi. Now, the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited has announced that the country's oil production has exceeded 1.8 million barrels per day. Additionally, gas production has also risen to 7.4 billion cubic feet per day as of November 11th, 2024. Now, this update was disclosed during the NNPCL Limited's production war room meeting in Abuja, where the team projected an increase of production to 2 million barrels per day. That's by the end of the year.
Now you are doing 1.8 million barrels inclusive of condensate. And I've always said that, look, Nigeria has capacity, and whatever Nigeria does benefit the entire African continent. During the COVID, we did 2.5 million barrels. With no additional, investments, we did that.
To ensure we have not just full recovery of production, but also to escalate our current production to levels that is expected and demanded that we have, both from Mr. President and Honorable Minister and the Board of Directors, that we must increase our production to levels that in the short term and in the long term, levels that is acceptable to our shareholders as a company.
We are able to crush the obstacle that was standing between us and achieving our mandate. One of the key obstacles is restoration of security architecture. We are able to block and bring into operation some of our shutdown pipeline. That enables us to open up our wells, and we're able to take that production into the market.
All right, there. Well, let's have a partner, energy and chemical leader at Deloitte Africa, Mr. Olumide Esan, joins me to continue this conversation. Good afternoon, Mr. Esan. How are you today?
Very well. Good afternoon, Tolu. My pleasure to be here this afternoon.
Yeah. Well, Nigeria's quest to double oil output and the realities on ground. What do you make of this news from the NNPCL, and how sustainable is this? Can we hit 2 million before the end of the year?
No, well, Tolu, let me start by actually, celebrating, the 1.8 million barrels. I think it's been a while that we actually had 1.8 million barrels. I mean, if you take a step back and look at history, we once produced 2.5 million barrels in this country. That's 2005, to Q4 of 2005. And at that point in time, one company alone, among the IOCs, was producing 1 million barrels a day. So, but often suffered from lack of investment. In the last 10 years, there's not been new investment in the industry, in the real sense of investment. And in fact, if you look at the deep water space, there's not been a single greenfield FID in the last decade. And so you can understand why, production has suffered natural decline. If you now couple that with the challenges we've had with insecurity and crude theft and vandalization, and also a lot of, regulatory bottleneck that has plagued the industry, and we then layer that on top of the PIB issue that took almost forever to get past, you could understand why we are where we are. And I think what is important is that we are making progress once again. Now, I like the new declaration by NUPRC, the project 1 million barrels per day, which has been declared, a new project which they want to achieve in the next 12 to 24 months. I think by 2026, they want Nigeria to be restored back to at least 2.6 million barrels a day. So, I think we are making progress, and there's a lot of work being done, by the government, by the presidency, and also the supporting agencies to bring this to come to pass. But there's still headwinds of insecurity. I wouldn't say that government has completely tackled that issue. We still have issues around integrity of the assets in the fields, and as you may know, this has impacted more the Eastern Delta than the Western Delta. So I mean, even when companies are able to produce, they have issues with evacuation because of crude theft and all of that. So it's still a journey to go, but there is a lot of effort, because Nigeria has realized we need these effects for survival. We need the effects to stabilize Naira. We need to use this oil and gas wealth to develop Nigeria and make Nigeria ready for a post-fossil world. So there's still quite a lot of work to be done. I mean, I need to mention, that earlier this year we saw some revamping of, an attempt to encourage further investments in the oil and gas space with the presidential executive order on non-restricted gas, which basically kind of incentivize investment in greenfield non-restricted gas fields, providing production tax, credits for companies and also providing production tax allowances. But at the same time, making rules to simplify the contracting process, which has typically taken, some 2 years, sometimes 3 years, streamlining, the role of NCDMB in all of this as well. These were all positive steps, which we really do hope that government will implement to later, to debottleneck the challenges we have in the industry. And we've also seen some green lights also in the deep water space with the deep water incentive, which has also now been gazetted, which grants, production tax credits as well for investors willing to invest in greenfield deep water assets, both oil and gas. So I think in terms of, policy, I think government is in the right step, but I think what we need is consistency and commitment to implementing through what government intends to do. If we see that, and that is complemented by, the security, architecture being overhauled, particularly with regards to, security in the Niger Delta, we just may be able to get back to 2.5, 2.6 million barrels.
That would be really good. You've done a real the analysis details, going into some challenges, the onshore, all of the shallow water, deep water issues, and all. And I would still like to stay with some of them individually. But let me ask first by saying that considering the challenges that we have the long-standing infrastructure issues. What about the growing penetration of local firms that try to fill in the gap, of course, by IOCs that have moved operations offshore? How do we manage all of these challenges as we try to improve or ramp up production?
I mean, that's a very pertinent question, really. The reality is, we know that the competencies and capacity for deep offshore largely still resides with the big oil. And so I'm not surprising that they all somehow are exiting the onshore and shallow water assets in favor of deep water. And of course, by so doing, they're also creating opportunities for the local independents, the Seplats, the Wandos, the First E&Ps, and the Westerns, and the likes of them. I think what we need to be careful of is to ensure that the policies we have and the regulations we have does provide effective support to these, indigenous Pan-African, energy companies to ensure that they're able to get what they need to really, fill the gap being left by the big oil. I mean, one thing that really comes to mind is funding. Of course, we know that with the journey towards net zero, recently becomes challenging to raise, money for oil and gas development without you being able to demonstrate how these funds you're accessing will help decarbonize your operations. But, you may be aware that early this year, the approval was obtained and Nigeria was elected as a country to host the African Energy Bank. And part of the idea is to ensure that local companies who hitherto would have gone to look for funds outside at double digits, USD, could perhaps now leverage on the African Energy Bank when it becomes fully operational to raise funds for development of local, oil and gas assets. And my expectation is that these companies will sweat the assets as much as they can, focus a lot on, rigless interventions, look at near-field oil developments, and, collectively, with a lot of them now in the business, I expect to see local capacity in terms of, technical competencies being developed in Nigeria. Because, for every big oil, they always have a center of excellence where, which is based oftentimes in the head offices where, big time oil maturations and R&D works are conducted. And of course, because of size, it makes sense for them to have those centers of excellence. All the big oils have one. So for the local independent companies, I expect the government to, also provide a conducive environment for them to perhaps co-create one. It could even be in the form of a technical oil university or whatever the case may be, something similar to what we have in the PTF, so such that capacity in terms of technical capacity can be developed. A lot of them right now leverage, entities and capacity outside of Nigeria, Europe especially, for some of those technical, content. So I believe that we can create a conducive environment that will permit us to be able to create, some of those competencies locally within Nigeria. So these guys can buy the capacity in Nigeria and use it to develop Nigerian oil. And that's where we need to move towards. In terms of dedication, I don't think there's a problem because a lot of the people who were running those blocks under the big oil are also transiting to this independent oil company. So the Nigerian engineers, the explorationists they're all there. I mean, I attended the NAPE event just last week, where you saw different awards given to Nigerians who have excelled in the area of exploration. I mean, similarly, earlier in the year when Sergeant Petroleum Engineer did this as well, so many Nigerians were recognized for excellence. So I believe in terms of capacity and talents, we only need to encourage and we need to consolidate on those gains. So if you're asking whether there is enough commitment on the part of these Nigerian companies to fill the gap and even raise the bar, I think there is. But I think there's a little bit of encouragement as well, because one important part of this business is the technical bit of it. It's a technical operation. So, you need people with expertise in seismics, people who can interpret the data, well engineers, reservoir engineers, subsurface, engineers, people who understand the dynamics of what goes on, on that. So we must build local capacity for that in Nigeria. I'm not seeing much of that at the moment, but when you talk about the people, I know that we've got talent across the world, in different places in the Middle East, North America, anywhere there's oil, you find Nigerian talents there. So we can bring these talents back, but I think there's something government can do also to ensure that we can actually harness this collective capacity together. So, I think it's a good thing. The big oil, they're focusing now on the deep water, and we're seeing increasing participation of Nigerian companies in onshore and shallow water. But barring issues around funding and deep technical expertise, I think they will do just well.
Getting more interesting. Companies' accusation, and we've gotten some nods from the Minister of Petroleum, who doubles as President, Abola Tinubu. What does that mean for the industry? I think that's on one side. And also, I'd like to ask you, Donald Trump is president-elect. What are you looking at for the oil market? Yes, I expected that, but I want to get your views really, particularly on the oil market. I know you give us some understanding of what we should expect the Trump presidency.
Right. So thanks, Tolu. I think it's a very interesting topic you just raised. Trump is not a fan of Conference of Parties. So, thank God COP, 29 has come, and of course, it's not yet Trump's presidency. Clearly, he's going to attempt to roll back, some of the fast-tracked transition to low-carbon energy in the U.S. It's going to open the taps. You're going to see more shale oil and gas flow through the world. Now, what does this mean for Nigeria? It's a double-edged sword. On the one hand, it will mean that there will be more competition for OPEC. And what that may mean is that we would have, oil price may drop, because now the world is going to be flooded with a lot more U.S. oil. Maybe permits that have been withheld by the Biden administration will be released by Donald Trump. So what that would then mean is there's a lot more supply in the market. So that maybe that could lead to a drop in the price of Brent, which, for example, today is around $73 a barrel. But having said that, I think the flip side of this is this, there is a lot of push, to achieve, carbon neutrality as quickly as possible. At least that's what the world has been working on that various COP conferences. But with Trump, what we might likely see also is that because the US is a significant part of this, so if US is pulling back or scaling back, we likely will see the same thing from China, right? And these are the two largest, polluters. Now, if you see a rollback by these two companies, what that will mean also that the various conditions, lenders are attaching to, giving out funds may also be rolled back. So you may see that, okay, perhaps Nigerian companies are able to access more funds in the international market, with less stringent conditions around carbon efficiency. And if that were to be the case, then we have more money to develop, the various reservoirs and fuels that we have in Nigeria. To be honest, when I look at different energy scenarios, different companies and different international organizations, they do scenario mapping of where they see energy in 2050. And it's kind of interesting to see that oftentimes, depending on their beliefs, the outcomes vary. But one thing I've seen consistently is there is consensus that the energy need would increase significantly by 2050. Okay, that's because of the population growth, most of which is coming from Africa, and also the fact that as we automate the world more, automation consumes energy. So there will be more need for energy. However, the energy mix is going to change. So right now, you see fossil almost like, 40%, between 40 and 50 of current energy needs coming from fossil oil. But in 2050, that is going to drop significantly. I think that will drop to maybe about 30 of the world energy needs coming from fossil. However, if you look at it in absolute terms, Tolu, you will see that the need for fossil oil and gas will likely still remain the same, if not slightly more, particularly for gas. It will be more of gas in 2050. But when you look at, if today we need, 80 measurements of energy, out of which, maybe about, 40 is coming from fossil oil and gas. By 2050, we are going to need like 120. Okay, so rather than fossil, but having 50% of the 80 that we have now, fossil may just still be 50 in 2050. So if you look at it in absolute terms, we need more fossil energy in 2050. But if you're looking at it in relative terms, when you compare fossils with other energy sources, with solar, with wind, with hydro, with thermal, with hydrogen, then, relative terms, it drops. So where I'm going is that up until 2050, there's still a lot we can do to monetize the huge reserves that we have, whether it's the over 200 TCF, of gas, particularly that we have in this country. We can have many more, liquefied natural gas plants. We have a number of floating LNG plants that are currently being examined, being evaluated by various investors. So, of course, we know we're adding T7 to the one that we currently have. So I see a mixed bag from the Trump presidency in terms of helping us to prolong the days of oil and gas, and at the same time, helping us to probably able to access funds cheaper, because if China and US start to roll back, everybody, will then reconsider, their stance on accelerated path to energy transition. I think I've said this before on your show, and I need to say it again. I think the world still needs to recognize that, the decarbonization journey and journey to net zero is going to be an evolution. And so it's going to take some time and not a revolution. Some people, the Greenpeace and rest of them, Friends of the Earth, want this to happen almost like yesterday. And that will be an evolution, but that's not going to happen. We saw that shock during COVID, everybody realized immediately after COVID that, this is not a journey that we can start today and end tomorrow. So, overall, I'm cautiously optimistic about Trump presidency when it comes to the impact it will have on the oil and gas business globally.
Finally, before I let you go, let's touch on gas. If we can do this in 2 minutes. What is happening with our production? We are trying to, there's a lot of opportunities in that space. And this was also raised at ADIPEC 2024. The opportunities are proven and unproven reserves of gas. So how well are we now ready to take advantage of this?
So in terms of determination, I think I spoke earlier today, around the incentives created by the government for non-associated gas for onshore and shallow water earlier in the year, and the one for deep water non-associated gas, which was also recently gazetted in October. And this speaks to one thing. the fact that we know that this is God-given resource that we are, and we need to get the best, out of them. Now, we have challenges, infrastructure, because so no matter how much we have need for gas in the downstream, if we don't have pipeline infrastructure to bring this gas from upstream to downstream, then we have a challenge. Number two, we have issues around pricing, okay? Until we have a value chain that works and market reflective, we will continue to struggle with investors, particularly to invest in the midstream. Now, and the same may apply to the upstream. If the Gencos can't recover their money, they are likely to also, not ask for more gas from the producers. And so, and that breaks down the entire value chain. So if we have right pricing for the gas, investors, this industry relies on economics. It relies on data. If the prices are right, investors will invest more money to produce the gas. Okay? They pass the gas through the gas plants, process the gas, and then, turn it to the market. It can come to the market via pipeline gas, or it can be exported via LNG. It can even be transported within Nigeria as domestic LNG using virtual pipelines. Now, we also need gas actually to power and fire our own industry, our own economic development. I mean, AKK is an example. Ajakuta, Kano, Kaduna, pipeline is still in the works. A lot of billions have been spent on it, and they still have some miles to go to complete that. But the idea is this gas is needed for industrialization. It's certainly cheaper than using diesel to power our industries. But the value chain must be sustainable. And the greatest problem right now is the pricing of the gas. And I know quite a lot of work has gone into this. In terms of projects, so the industry, the operators and the government, they have this decade of gas they've been working together. And you observed recently the open commissioning by President Tinubu. The reality is everybody knows that we need the gas, and we need a system to work so that the pricing is right and the investors can put their money knowing fully well that they will recover their money. So for me, gas is the future. So when Nigeria talks about decade of gas, I believe in it, because at the end of the day, we're not only able to export and earn forex from this gas, we're also able to use this gas to develop our economy. We're able to use it to power our power plants. So anyhow you look at it, we need to do more in the area of making it attractive for investors. There have been some incentives, for example, in the midstream, some further tax holidays if you are putting money in gas pipeline infrastructure, which is fine. This will all make the economics to be better. There's also the investment by the government to actually encourage people, for example, to use compressed natural gas, encourage people to use LPG. The penetration in Nigeria today of clean cooking fuel, if you must know, Tolu, is about 14%, meaning 86% of Nigeria use dirty fuel to cook. So use of LPG and electric cooker is just about 14% in Nigeria, and actually it's the same in West Africa. So there is so much we can still do with gas. Power in itself, those who have access to power in Nigeria, we just have about 55%. So 45 don't even have access to grid power at all. And then, the cheapest source of power to us in Nigeria is still gas, because we have it in abundance. So gas is our future. Gas is energy. Gas is life for us as a country. And so we must be joined together. The government policies must be joined up with, the private sector driven initiatives to ensure that we can optimally and economically, get the best out of our God-given gas resources.
It's a good way to leave it. I must thank you so much for your time. Partner Energy and Chemicals Leader, Deloitte Africa, Mr. Olumide Esan. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, Tolu. It's my pleasure. Bye.
Well, it's an interesting conversation, I must say, when you're talking to Mr.